Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Jason Davis here with you. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, the preeminent podcasting soccer network in North America. Right? Right. Absolutely. 100%. We're the premier. Speaking of premier, we'll talk Premier League today. Our friend Luke Moore from the Football Ramble will join us. That's always a good conversation with Mr. Moore. Also today, Chris Bianchi, Rapids News on Twitter, covers the Rapids for MLSsoccer.com. He'll join us. We'll talk MLS with him, his team he covers anyway. Pablo Mastroeni, is he the guy? I'm still confused. Who's going to take the reins in Colorado? Have they decided that he's going to be the guy heading into the season? Because guess what? The season starts in 12 days. 12 days until the MLS season starts. 12 days until we get going on what might be one of the biggest MLS seasons ever. We say that every season. I know we say that every year. We don't have any expansion franchises in 2014. We'll get 2 of them next year. But it's just I just got done, or I'm in the middle of reading a roundtable at Sports Business Journal. Tim Lewicki, Anthony Precourt, Nick Sakevich, who else? Adrian Hanauer. All of them sort of talking about where MLS is, where MLS stands, how MLS relates to the rest of the soccer world. Fascinating stuff. And maybe I'll get into some details and some quotes a little bit later in the show. But off the top here, relating to where MLS stands in the world, specifically in the United States, there's 2 areas that MLS fans seem to care about when it comes to this league. How does it rank compared to the rest of the world's soccer leagues? We're comparing constantly. Is it as good as the championship? Is it as good as what level are they at? Could an MLS team compete for promotion? We care about all of these things for whatever reason. The other part of it is, where does MLS rank in the American sports landscape? The landscape that includes the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL. Where does MLS rank in those? When is MLS going to become major? The word's in the name, Major League Soccer. When is MLS going to be thought of as a major sports league in the United States? Honestly, it doesn't bother me. It really does. I would love for MLS to get serious treatment on SportsCenter, and for the sports talk radio stations in DC and Philadelphia and New York and Boston and across the country to include MLS in their daily rundown of what's happened. What's the big news today in our local market? Is it our NBA team signing a player to a 10-day contract? Is it our NHL team losing their 3rd game in a row? Or is it, hey, look, the MLS season is coming. Let's talk about what additions our team has made. Maybe Toronto does this. Maybe Seattle does this. I don't know. I'm not there. But I think for the most part, it's fair to say MLS gets short shrift in those situations. And it will come. Eventually it will happen. Based on the growth of MLS, based on where everything is going and all of the indications, I'm comfortable thinking one day we'll have a generation of broadcasters
Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
All right, so we had a bit of an interruption there in the first segment. I didn't get out the most significant thing that happened. Certainly Chelsea getting a late goal to get 3 points against Everton and put themselves on top of the table is going to lead most people's thoughts today.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important 3 points, and of course, as all wins are important this stage of the season, but obviously coming the way it did and coming after Everton looked pretty good value and stuff, and you wondered if Chelsea could find a way through to do so in such dramatic fashion in the very final minute through, well, debatably their club captain, and people are not really sure who got the goal, but Terry was certainly credited with it at the time. Uh-huh. It's huge for them, and it also showed up Everton to be a little bit short of course.
Oh, I just lost Luke Moore. Look at that. This is a good Monday show. This is a fantastic. We're on fire today. That call just completely and utterly dropped out for no apparent reason. Thank you for that, Skype. Thank you very much. That's just a lovely thing that just happened there. Let's see here. What let's take a quick break. That's a good idea. Why don't we do that? We'll get our thoughts together. I'll get Luke back on the line. Stay there. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Torres and Eto had a good run of form, but he's, according to Jose, perhaps 35 years old. Does Chelsea have enough firepower, basically?
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, you look at what Daniel Sturridge is doing at Liverpool now. I mean, they were happy to let him go. They were playing him out wide. They weren't playing him through the middle or relying on him to score goals. They didn't give him a chance despite getting him from City. And look how many goals he's scoring now. I mean, he's the second highest scorer in the Premier League. Chelsea's problems will probably be of that variety, but their attacking midfield players do contribute an awful lot, and so it doesn't really matter if you win every game 1-0 and you only score 8 goals or 10 goals or whatever it is between now and the end of the season. They'll still win the league, so it's not necessarily a huge problem. In terms of Chelsea's chances of winning the Premier League, you've got to look at the fixtures they've got left. They go to Anfield, and so do Man City, actually. And in a weird way, it's actually in Liverpool's hands. If Liverpool beat Man City and Chelsea at home, they've got a very good chance of winning the league this season, which is absolutely outrageous. Chelsea's other sort of difficult games, I think they've got Arsenal at home towards the end of March, I think. and they've got Spurs at home next month as well. Apart from that, in the Anfield game, it's pretty straightforward for them. I think they play Stoke, Swansea, Sunderland, Norwich, and Cardiff. It's like 5 of their last 6 games.
Mm-hmm.
So you really got to give them every chance of lifting the title this season.
Right. Look, Liverpool beating Swansea 4-3 and Chelsea beating Everton 1-0 are essentially, they're much different games to watch, but in the end, they're both 3 points for those teams that are chasing top 4 title, wherever you want to put them. You've got Liverpool in this title chase right now?
Absolutely. They've scored more goals than Man City in the league now, which is a stat worthy of note, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is we've seen teams in the past over the years in the Premier League come undone by conceding too many goals. Now, it's a bit of a gamble to be conceding that many because you're not always going to score 4 when you could see 3 at home. Now, they need to really, needless to say, they need to sort that out. But Brendan Rodgers has been quite pressed today over here. He's been saying that, he'll never play like a Mourinho side.
Yeah.
He really wants to entertain the fans. He thinks they deserve it, which is all very well when you're scoring loads of goals. But for a while, Sturridge gets injured, which he has done earlier in the season. All of a sudden, you're conceding, you're not scoring, and then it becomes dangerous.
If you're not sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
I was just going to say, obviously, it's a bit of an obvious point to make, but if you're not conceding and your star striker gets injured, you're still not conceding.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So it's a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, look, isn't it easy for Rodgers to say all of this when he has the personnel to do it this way? As you said, if Sturridge goes down, if they lose Suarez for a length of time, Jordan Henderson popping up and scoring 2, they can find other goals in other places, I imagine. But it's easy for him to say we're going to go out and entertain the fans and try and not play like a Mourinho side when you have those 2 guys up top doing all of that work.
Yeah, but to be fair to Rodgers, he's put this side together. It's certainly taken the shape of a Rodgers team now. So he's got to take some credit for that. I think the Premier League's a much better, a much stronger, a much better proposition as a viewer and as a fan, with a strong Liverpool and with someone like Brendan Rodgers at the helm in it.
Yes.
Liverpool contribute a great amount to the Premier League this season, and all power to them for doing it. They've not lost for 8 games now. They come into decent form. Remember a couple of weeks ago I told you about Chelsea just starting to click into gear, and they're still doing that. They've not lost for ages, but so are Liverpool. Which Arsenal and Man City look a little bit wobbly in my view. Mm-hmm. And it genuinely is a 4-horse race. I do think Liverpool are worthy contenders.
No, absolutely. And if you look at the table right now, Manchester City has a game in hand, which is obviously part of the goals scored number as well. But it does seem to look like a mini league in the top 4, as it tends to be. That's where you want to shoot for right now, with that gap between Liverpool and Spurs being 6 points, and then United a further 5 points back. It very much looks like those 4 teams, and they all have a chance. 4 points is not much at this point.
No, absolutely not. It isn't much, especially as I said earlier, Liverpool still got to play City and Chelsea. Mm. So, it could get even closer. Tottenham missed an opportunity yesterday, losing that away to Norwich. Is it one of those things where it was off the back of the Europa League game? I'm not sure about that because they didn't take a few players. A few of their key players didn't even feature against Dnipro. I think it was a bad day at the office for them. Adebayo was poor. Norwich are fighting for their lives and were well worth the win. It really is looking like... it's difficult to say because you've still got 11 games left, or in Man City's case, 12 games left. It's a lot of points to be played for, and there'll be a few twists and turns, as we always see. I really hope it's as close as this with 2 or 3 games left. Absolutely, if we could ever get into a position where we've got a 4-point gap between the first 4 teams with, say, 3 games left, I think that'll be all the things for potentially the best Premier League season ever.
Right, and look, again, talking about a mini league at the top, I can't. It's hard for me to imagine that Spurs, United, or Everton can really make a run enough to have a shot at that fourth position. But you never know. So what we're looking at, if I'm going to go on that assumption, is Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City, and Liverpool finishing in some order, so perhaps a very different order than what we're looking at right now. But those are the teams that have proven that they have the type of longevity. Although, as you said, City and Arsenal both looking wobbly. How important was it, not just for Arsenal to win after the Champions League week that they had, but also to win convincingly? And Sunderland's bad, we know that, but still to win convincingly and put 4 in the net.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a free result for them. It was a free 3 points for them purely because Sunderland got one eye in the cup final on Sunday. No matter what you sort of try and do with those players psychologically and how you coach them, they're all going to be thinking, well, I want to play in a cup final, I don't want to be injured, and I don't want to be suspended. So when you go away to a team who is good as Arsenal anyway, it's always likely that they're going to give them a good old-fashioned shellacking. But I thought Arsenal were decent. You expect it's a game you expect them to win. Up next, they travel to Stoke on Saturday, which is traditionally a place with a lot of subtext and a lot of narrative around the Aaron Ramsey injury and around the physicality of Stoke. I don't think Arsenal will be intimidated by them this time round. So it'll be interesting. This is all part of a big period of games for because obviously they've got that Bayern Munich game later in the month, which we would have thought that that's probably done and dusted now. Even though they won there last season, I still don't think they'll have enough quality to get through. And they've got to go to White Hart Lane, then they go to Stamford Bridge, then they're at home to Man City. We'll know an awful lot more about Arsenal when March is finished. And it could well be the day they're out of the race. But it could be, actually, their credentials have been fully solidified and they're a team to be taken seriously with about 6 or 7 games to go.
So what is it about Man City 1-0 over Stoke? What is it about Man City that is less than convincing right now for you?
It's difficult to say, really. I mean, there was an odd situation where Jovetic, I think, came on and was subbed off. Am I right in saying that? I didn't actually see all the games.
I'm not aware of that myself. I mean, at this point...
Right, okay. I think I'm right in saying that. But I mean, really... I don't know whether City were ever going to keep up that level of goal scoring at a rate they were doing it. You're always going to get fatigued. You're always going to get... I mean, they had a big game against Barcelona, of course. So off the back of that, that was a disappointing result for them. Yeah. They've still got Aguero missing. It's difficult to say, but I mean, the fact is that they won the game. And as I said earlier on the call, all they've got to do is win 1-0. It doesn't matter to them. If they keep winning, they're going to be in a pretty good chance. Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see them... Look, Chelsea wins 1-0 there's a bit of fortune and they get it's an added time and perhaps Tim Howard put it in his own net. And we sort of see that as Chelsea grinding out results the way that Mourinho would like to do. If City goes from scoring, 3-4 goals on average to grinding out 1-0 results, then maybe we are going to take a step back when we assess them. And Jovetic did come off. He lasted 12 minutes, came off with a hamstring injury. So.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. So he's had problems. I mean, that's probably because it's linked to other injuries he's had. That you do see that happen a lot. But Jason, the other way of putting it is that Man City have now scored 1 goal in their last 3 league games.
Yes.
They lost to Chelsea 1-0. They drew 0 with Norwich, and now they've beaten Stoke 1-0.
Right.
So a lot of it's to do with momentum. And are we? I mean, it's difficult to tell definitively because before that they won 7 games in a row in the league. So are we looking at a stutter? Are we looking at Pellegrini starting to lose it with Mourinho chipping off at him and with this result against Barcelona in the Champions League? Is that going to affect them? And we'll have to wait and see. But Manchester City coming up, they have that return game against Barcelona. Again, they're in a similar position to Arsenal. I think it's beyond them. But they've got a chance to lift the trophy this Sunday, which could massively galvanise them. And they've got a cup game against Wigan as well, which could put them in the quarter-final in the last stage of the FA Cup. And then they've got actually some winnable games. They've got Hull away and they've got Fulham at home, and there's a big Manchester derby. So it really is. I mean, people say this all the time in the media narrative around the sort of key parts of the season. But for Manchester City and for Arsenal, March is absolutely key. It really is.
Are we to the point now where we are sort of just lumping United into the also-rans, and we sort of... I just don't know I'd love to bring up United and say, oh, look, they went to Selhurst, they got a 2-0 win. That's good for them. I mean, Crystal Palace, a relegation threat inside, but what is there to say about that game, really? I mean, except for maybe the goals that were scored.
Well, that's the first away win they've had since the end of December, I believe. It's an awful lot of time for people who are used to watching Man United. I still think they're laboured. I still think they struggled. They didn't look that packed full of ideas. This clumsy sort of Shamak challenge, which gave them the penalty, really sort of not kicked the door down for them, and they were a lot more relaxed after that and really scored a nice goal. But Palace are a decent team at home. Palace were above United in the form table going into this game. Palace were the form team going into this tie. So it wasn't necessarily easy for United. I think you don't want to be too harsh on them because a win's a win. I mean, it's their first league win for a while. I think since they beat Cardiff. So they're still 5 points off a Europa League place, which does put it all into perspective. And if Everton win their game in hand, which I think is at home to Crystal Palace, so you'd expect them to win that, they're going to be back down in 7th again. You wonder whether Man United even want a Europa League campaign next season.
That's a good question.
I don't think they're going to get a Champions League campaign unless they win the Champions League, which is where they played the best of their football this season.
Right.
But that's farcical to suggest that.
Right.
So it's going to be listen, you never know. If you want to spin it in a positive way, look at what Liverpool are doing this season with no European football to worry about.
True. But
it's very well. You can't. Would prefer that to a Europa League campaign. You would have thought.
Well, yeah, but you can't imagine them sandbagging it. I mean, certainly Moyes can't afford to do that.
Well, I mean, the Glazers or the spokesman for the Glazers or whatever it is come out and said they've budgeted for a season without Champions League football. So the problem will be, can they persuade players to come to their club if they've not got Champions League football? And more importantly for me, can David Moyes prove that he knows how to use these top quality players? I mean, look at the way he's used Mata so far. For me, that's been really underwhelming, and in some cases just downright confusing. They've got two number 10s in there, in Rooney and Mata. He wants to keep Van Persie right up top, so he can't play Rooney right up top with Mata just behind. Mata seems to be moved out into a sort of unfamiliar position where he's not at his best. He's not being used more effectively. No, I know it's early on, but I don't know whether he can really sort of show his credentials that he knows how to use these top quality players anyway so far. And that's going to factor in any potential new signings' thoughts, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I look at you would think that it depends on results. I mean, it's been an underwhelming season to this point. There are a lot of ways you can excuse away some of United's struggles. David Moyes just hasn't gotten it, though. So it makes you wonder, no matter what the Glazers will say now, would they just ride this season out? He's almost at this point almost think of him as a lame duck and move on after the season. And how does that affect the way he manages this side through the rest of the campaign?
I think Moyes has got to treat it. I don't think he'll be fired. I think if they're really seriously thinking about any potential of it going wrong long term, they wouldn't have given him such a long contract. It's not a knee-jerk reaction to hire him. I think before on your show, maybe not on your show, maybe on my show, that they think Moyes is a good manager, but they also think he can become a great manager, and that's why they've hired him. He'll stay at the club. He'll be at the club. There's no question about that. He's not going to get fired unless something disastrously goes wrong next season. Okay. But I think Moyes needs to use this as an almost luxurious sort of learning opportunity where he gets to learn loads more about the club, get used to the scrutiny, get used to managing players at the very top level. And that's no disrespect to Everton because he bought well there and they had a good team. But we're talking about genuine world-class players. He can get used to sort of managing them, and at the same time identifying firsthand the areas they need to strengthen in. And I think what's key for him is to really identify where the players aren't good enough. And I can certainly think of a few candidates and be brave enough to get rid of them and replace them with players that him and his scouting team have identified.
You get the sense that he needs to, as you said, learn how to use these top class players, but he also needs to go through the education of being United's manager and everything that comes with that, being in front of the cameras, having everything he says just dissected and sort of the image that he puts out there, because there's been a lot of talk about, David Moyes is not Alex Ferguson, and he doesn't need to be, but he at least needs to project the right kind of image so that people, aren't going to say, well, he's not a good fit for United because he doesn't believe that they're a top class team that can win everything.
Yeah, and I don't think it's the same situation as when Ferguson came in, because Alex Ferguson, when he took over United, obviously wasn't the Alex Ferguson that he is now, and Manchester United weren't the club that they are now. Right. He didn't have the scrutiny, and also the world was a different place then. There wasn't like dedicated club TV channels and the internet and 24-hour news, and everything he does is going to be scrutinised, not only here but pretty much all over the world.
Absolutely,
and it's such a big learning curve for him. They've hired him for a long-term basis, and I think United fans and United as a club are going to have to take a little bit of medicine. We don't know how long for yet, but certainly for the near foreseeable future, and knuckle down and try and really identify their strengths and sort of negate their weaknesses. And it may well be, as I've said, short term it's a disaster to not win the Champions League, but they'll have a situation next season where they won't have Champions League football, and they may be able to sort of kick on and achieve what they haven't achieved this season. I mean, some people may listen to that and think that's a bit fanciful and think that I'm trying to spin it ridiculously positively for Moyes. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying that it's not all doom and gloom.
Sure. I mean,
maybe they kick on, and it's a new thing for them.
No matter what happens, they are still Manchester United, and it's still very unlikely that they're going to suddenly tumble down the table and become a team that cannot, in 1 or 2 seasons, turn it back around and be not only a contender for the Premiership, but also a contender in Europe. Luke Moore from the world famous Football Ramble joining us as he does every week to talk Premier League. I appreciate the time as always, Luke. Thanks a lot. Thanks for hanging in there.
Have a good week. Cheers. Thank you.
Let's take a break. When we come back, Chris Bianchi, Colorado Rapids beat reporter for MLSsoccer.com, will join us. We'll talk through their managerial situation with Pablo Mastroeni and what they've got going into the season. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, turning now to MLS topics. Let's get team specific. Let's talk about what's happening out in the great state of Colorado with the Colorado Rapids. Chris Bianchi, beat reporter for MLSsoccer.com, Rapids_news on Twitter, joins us now. Hi, Chris.
Hey, how's it going, Jason? Thanks for having me.
How is Colorado right now? Are you in Colorado right now? I never know.
I am in Colorado. I'm in I guess I'm out in the burbs here. It is very nice out. In fact, we got a little dusting of snow overnight, but it's a beautiful morning here in the Mile High City. Things are good.
And how are 12 days out, how are preparations going for the Colorado Rapids, who, if I'm not mistaken, chose not to do one of these preseason trips? Have they no Arizona, no Florida? Is that the case? Or they go to Arizona?
No, they've been gone pretty much the entire preseason.
Okay.
They're in Tucson right now.
Tucson, right.
They've been in Tucson for the past week or so. They'll be out there in Tucson for most of next week as well. So they're going to be hanging out in Tucson. They were in Houston earlier in the preseason. They were in Vegas as well. I mean, you got to get out of Colorado during February.
Sure you do. How is all of that gone in light of the fact that this is a team that lost their head coach, Oscar Pareja, to FC Dallas? He wanted to go home. Eventually, the situation came to a head, and he moved on. And they still have yet to really, as far as I know, if they slapped any tags on Pablo Mastroeni that says he's taken this team into the season, or is it just kind of a de facto situation at this point?
Well, the Rapids, what they wanted to do, what's been expressed to me, is that they want to take their time with their coaching search.
But they don't have any time, Chris. There's no time left.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is at this point pretty clear to me, certainly far from official or anything like that, but it's pretty clear that you would think at this point that Pablo's going to be the guy. They have interviewed foreign coaches. They've interviewed other coaching candidates. They've interviewed a handful, I believe it's 4, aside from Pablo, who did get a formal interview a couple of weeks ago as well, and he's the interim head coach, is I guess the way to put it. They have some sort of complicated title or classification for it. I think it might be interim, but I should know this off the top of my head. But I don't. I mean, he's essentially a de facto interim head coach right now. He's the guy. It would be a major upset at this point if it's anybody decides Pablo is the permanent head coach. I mean, just the way he's carried things out. It started really at the combine last month, where he was the one sitting down interviewing these guys. I mean,
right.
He was acting like a head coach. I mean, if you really think a guy's an interim head coach, are you really going to have him be the one conducting these interviews and being the primary guy? Marlon Harrison, the first-round pick, that he mostly talked to Pablo.
Right.
That's what he told me. So, I mean, that gives you the clue right there. Pablo's really going to be the guy, and I think what the Rapids want, they feel, again, they won't say this publicly, but they do feel a bit burned by Oscar Pareja. They want a guy who they think is actually going to be here long-term. They want a guy who's committed to the project of winning and playing the attractive style of soccer, which is what the Rapids want to do.
Okay.
And I think they thought that Oscar was that guy, and obviously that wasn't the case. So I think they want a former player to fill that void. They want their next Mike Petke, their next Jason Christ. That's what they want.
Look, I have no problem imagining Pablo Mastroeni as the next Petke or Christ, but it's just such a unsettled, completely, this is not the way that you transition a former playing great into the coaching job. It seems to me that Pablo's got a much tougher road into this than so many of those other guys who were given the opportunity.
Yeah, I think, without inserting too much of my own opinion, this is what the Rapids, I believe, are thinking is, they wanted to take their time. So I think they felt that Pablo, you kind of give him essentially a run out, a real life run out there. B, I think the idea as well is that they surround him with a couple of head coach or former head coaches and guys with lots of experience. So they brought over John Medhad, a Dutchman from was a Derby County last couple of years, and team president Tim Hinchy was at Derby County before he came to Colorado. So there's a connection. So they brought him over. He's an experienced guy. He's been coaching for 20, 30 years. Steve Cook, one of the assistants, the only guy, one of the 2 holdovers from Oscar's regime. They're bringing him as well, and he's been coaching for 20 some odd years as well. So you're talking about 2 guys, and if you go to practices, it's really Steve Cook who's kind of barking the orders out a lot of the time. And Pablo's kind of more, I think the way it's kind of like an internship to a head coaching position is, that might be a little harsh or a little, but they're certainly giving him some training wheels, I guess the point is they're surrounding him with these experienced guys. So the idea of saying, hey, can Pablo handle it? How are the guys reacting to him? Obviously, keep in mind, a lot of these guys on the team played with Pablo. Pablo was on the Rapids this time last year. So they all, team captain Drew Moore, he was the captain last year. Obviously, that might change. But for now, Captain Drew Moore said he'd run through a wall for Pablo. They do seem to react well to him, and I think that's where the Rapids are coming from. Is let's give ourselves some time, as well as give Pablo some time to work into this role. I think I understand how it's perceived from the outside is a little different from that, and it's hard for me to tell. The Rapids are in Arizona, and they're keeping him away from me, so I have no idea how necessarily they're reacting to him. But I think that's what the Rapids are thinking.
Look, you can sort of talk your way into any approach when it comes to this situation. And I understand they got burned by Oscar Pareja, and they want somebody who's committed. And if you're going to go for somebody, why not go for the guy who is, again, a club legend, has been around forever, and certainly buys into what the Rapids are in that community and everything else. But I don't know. It's just, at least give the guy some semblance of authority, because whether or not Drew Moore and the rest of those players who played alongside Pablo last year will run through, or the last couple of years, will run through a wall for him, they still can't feel completely comfortable that he's going to be there tomorrow or the next day if there's no official title given to him. And then there's the other matter of, transitioning from a peer and being able to be friends with all of these guys to being the boss.
I agree. I mean, look, it's a pretty quick turnaround. Here would be my bigger point to it is I talked to Pablo, what would it be, 17, 18 months ago, and he had no idea what he was going to do with the rest of his life. He really didn't.
That's the other thing.
And granted,
thrown into it, right? Just he wasn't one of those guys who said, I'm going to go into coaching. I'm going to go into coach. I think what we heard as he was getting ready to retire was going to go into youth soccer, right? He was going to be a youth soccer guy. Now
he was doing camp counseling. I mean, he was, frankly, certainly nothing against Pablo. He'd gone through by his admission, one of the darkest places he's ever been in his life, where he had those concussion things and he was feeling post-symptoms. So granted, it's not his fault and it's not to pin anything on him. But this is a year and a half ago. This is not that long ago. And that was, he said it. He said, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I don't know if I'm coming back. He decided to come back for the year. And he comes back. He has to trade to LA, which was his idea. He wanted to get out. And then here he is, the head coach, less than a year later after going on the trip to LA. I mean, it seems to me that rather than some of the other points, I think I understand where everything else is coming from. The one thing that doesn't quite add up in my mind is this is quick. This is very quick to me. I thought the role that they had initially assigned him to, which was a special assistant to Paul Bravo, kind of working into a front office role, that seems great. Pablo's a guy who's very passionate, very emotional, and I'm sure he could be a big asset, and he's well respected, obviously, in this league and by a lot of players. But to throw him as a head coach so quickly, it might work, and they're probably going to get a guy who wants to be here for a long time, but Pablo had his house for sale a few months ago. I mean, and here he is, he's the head coach. I mean, it's a little all over the board in my mind. If you're asking me, that's the bigger question, that's the bigger point out of all this.
It's got to be frustrating from a fan's perspective, Chris, because all of that momentum built off of last year. You had these kids come up and play so well and turn that team into not only a playoff contender, and they ultimately made it in the playoff, but a fun team to watch. There was a lot of exuberance behind the Colorado Rapids name, and Oscar was a major part of that. But then again, like I said, the kids in the and it just seems, and this is nothing against Pablo, but you have to consider his inexperience and the fact that they traded Henry Thomas, and there just seems to be so much uncertainty. It just seems like they're ready for a step back. And how, as a fan, can you see all of this offseason happening and not be concerned?
I agree with that. That's certainly, if you're a fan, you have reason for it. I mean, it's not the Rapids' fault that Oscar left. I mean, they did not expect it. There's no question about it. They will not say it publicly. They felt burned by this. They were not happy about how necessarily it happened. They were kind of left up to dry in the situation. So if you're a fan, I wouldn't pin on the team so much. I understand when Oscar comes back, and Oscar fans were to boo him. I mean, I would get it. I would get it if I'm a fan. But a lot of these circumstances are not the Rapids' fault. I mean, you're right. I mean, what you were saying about I was surprised. I really thought Oscar was just shoot down these rumors as soon as they started up, and he didn't. And he has family concerns. His mother is not well, and she lives in Dallas. That was a big part of the reason he went back there. But, I mean, I was stunned that he left. I mean, the Rapids have clearly had something pretty good going here. I mean, all the stuff that Oscar's been working a year and a half for really started to come to fruition during the second half of the year. He's got these kids. I mean, Chris Kloop being talked about the left back of the future for the national team, Dylan Powers, Sean Brown. They got all the young kids really starting to click here. And then he leaves, and Oscar was a big part of it. I mean, Oscar got the most out of his players. I mean, you're talking about a team that was starting a veteran Castoff and Akiva Harris and Nathan Sturgis, who had been really a backup for 4 or 5 years. And Oscar put them in his system, and it worked. It worked. So I understand why fans are frustrated. There's big reason for frustration, and Henry Thomas is gone now. That's going to affect the defense.
Yeah. What happened there with Henry Thomas?
Yeah, so the Rapids declined the option, and he had an expensive option. And my understanding, what I've been told, is that Henry Thomas was looking for DP level money, and the Rapids didn't want to give it to him.
Sure.
Keep in mind, they just signed Gabriel Torres as a designated player. And if you're asking me personally, I also think that Henry Thomas is a very good player. I'm not sure he's DP level, especially for a team like the Rapids, who they've got one of their books, the first one ever. The Rapids are not the sort of team that can throw around. If they get a DP, he has to be the guy. They can't screw up those kinds of decisions. So I don't think they felt that Henry was DP level worthy in terms of salary, and it was just end of the day, a money issue, and so they dealt him Dallas and got quite a bit of allocation money in return. So they signed Jose Mari, or they're about to announce it, I believe. Spaniard, who was playing in La Liga last year, as really their replacement there at defensive mid. But that is a big question. I mean, they're going to miss Henry. There's a little question about that one. Drew Moore said it. He was pretty blunt about it. He said there's no replacing a guy with Henry. They're going to miss him. He basically acted as a fifth defender, and the Rapids really struggled defensively in 2012, and they really picked it up on the defensive side of the ball last year, and that was a big reason why it was Henry Thomas. So they'll miss him. There's no question about it. That's a big question. On the field, that's the biggest one.
Yeah. Let me, before I let you go, and for people who aren't aware or don't pay attention to the Rapids or aren't MLS fans, there's been some talk, there's been some rumor that Stan Kroenke, and I'm not buying this, Chris, but I'm going to use this to set it up. Stan Kroenke's bought some land in L.A., and the reason he did that is because he's going to start an Arsenal shoot-off club and blah, blah, blah. He also owns the Rapids, and in fact, Don Garber was asked about Stan Kroenke being a potential buyer of Chivas USA during his conference call in the aftermath of the league buying that club. Is there any talk around the Rapids about, and you don't necessarily have to address the LA stuff, but sort of Kroenke's involvement and even the technical matters of it? I know he had to sell the Nuggets in order to be an NFL owner with the Rams. Where's the technical involvement of Stan Kroenke in the Colorado Rapids?
Well,
is this a 5-second answer or is this a 20-minute answer?
I mean, I guess I would say it's like if you're a kid and you got if you got I'm trying to think of a good analogy here, but essentially he doesn't really. I don't know how to put this kindly. Is I've never heard or seen Josh Kroenke or Stan Kroenke. Josh Kroenke, his son, who really is the guy who's in charge of very hands-on with the Avalanche and the Nuggets. I've never seen either one of those two guys in and around Dick's Sporting Goods Park. I've been covering this team for about 2 years now.
Okay.
That should give you a pretty good idea. And the fans' perception, which from my standpoint is accurate, is that really the Rapids are just another toy in Stan Kroenke's arsenal, but he dishes it off to some other guy who dishes it off to some other guy.
Mm-hmm.
It is perceived to be, and I've never seen anything to the contrary, although the Rapids they will go out of their way to compliment ownership. For example, when they signed Gabriel Torres, they had to pitch it to ownership, and they got the approval for it. So there's certainly that side of it. So I'm sure the Rapids would themselves disagree with my belief or the perception, but it's that they don't really care.
Yeah, okay. Hey, if that's the image that they put out there, and that's the perception among the fan base, then really whatever they may or may not be doing behind the scenes almost doesn't. I mean, it matters in terms of spending money, but it doesn't in terms of proving to the fans that they are committed. And this is a league where we are growing into a ownership either hands-on or out in front or making big noise or talking about making big noise and spending money, whether it's Lewicki, who is the face of the ownership, or a guy like Merritt Paulson, who is the ownership.
Right. Well, I'll give you an example. Josh Kroenke, who is, again, Stan Kroenke's son, but he's very involved, and Stan's really dished off a lot of his responsibilities, a lot of his duties over the years. So Josh is a very, very bright, young, capable guy. I mean, he's not just some rich kid's owner. He's a man of quite a few times. He's a very capable guy. He's done a lot with the Nuggets, and he has. During the Rapids playoff game, during the knockout game against Seattle last year, the Nuggets had their season opener, and the Rapids were in the playoffs, and guess where he was? He was at the season opener, and my understanding is he was texting, trying to get updates on the Rapids game throughout, but, I mean...
You're giving him a lot of credit.
That tells you where the priorities lie. I mean, it is another toy in the arsenal of Stan Kroenke. He's got so many different interests and so many different things, and there's certainly been some pretty nice things that come out. I mean, the Rapids do get quite a few of these young Arsenal trialists. They got one now, and a Bolivian guy named Samuel Galindo. So they do have some, I guess, fruits from that partnership with Arsenal. But really, I mean, it is hard to say anything other than the fact that it is the perception, and I believe it to be true, is that ownership couldn't care a whole lot less about this team. It's harsh, but
and again,
that's my perception.
If you're a Rapids fan, not only are you perhaps concerned about the direction of the club heading into this season, again, some things out of their control, but there's got to be some question now with a very young, raw, green head coach, if he is in fact the head coach. Lots of uncertainty. And it can't be, as a Rapids fan, it can't be fun to hear Stan Kroenke might start a team in LA and he might name it the LA Gunners and it might be directly related to Arsenal when there's this club that already exists that could have the same kind of relation. In fact, there's an argument to be made that you could have named this team the Arsenal at some point. I mean, I don't know if that was ever under consideration, but knowing the geography a little bit, it's got to be maddening.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there are some things to be. I guess, it's a concern. If I was a Rapids fan, I was looking on this thing, I'd be like, well, we're kind of a little stepchild here, but, we won an MLS title a couple of years ago, and we're still kind of looked at that way. But, I mean, I understand why. I mean, it's been a frustrating offseason. If you're a Rapids fan, they didn't make a whole lot of moves. I mean, Jose Mari's could be, he'll probably be a nice pickup, a guy from La Liga. That'll be the one big-ish move.
The saving grace is that there is a lot of talent, sorry for the pun again, in the Arsenal. I mean, they proved last season that Dylan Powers and Shane O'Neill and Deshaun Brown and Chris Klute can be part of a successful team. Again, it's just a matter of whether they can weather the entire season with an inexperienced guy leading the charge. And who knows what's going to happen down the road.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are, on the field is your biggest reason, and that's obviously the most important at the end of the day, but you didn't lose Dylan Powers, you didn't lose those guys. They still, Shane O'Neill back there, they've got a lot of reason for optimism on the field, but all this off the field stuff, like you said, it's hard for it. If you're a player and you're seeing all this stuff, how do you not react to it? You don't have a coach. He's a first-year guy. There's going to be a lot of questions surrounding him, regardless of whether he knocks his news conference out of the park or not. There's a huge question about Pablo Mastroeni coming in. From fans alike, you would think the fans would be the ones who'd be the most behind it. And I've held a few, again, very informal polls, but I think fans are pretty 50-50 on Pablo as head coach. And if you think the fans are, and the fans would have more of an emotional tie, then I'm sure most pundits looking in would be like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, look, I imagine that a lot of that is down to the fact that this was not always Pablo's direction. If he had said, I'm going to retire and I want to go into coaching, I'm sure everybody would feel, or that was always his plan when he retired. I'm sure people would feel a little bit differently. If there was some sense that the team was confident in Pablo enough to give him a title now, rather than go through this, we're going to take our time, we're going to interview a bunch of people thing, which again is not, that's a responsible way to go about it, except as it relates to the guy who probably will end up leading them out, at least out of the gates.
Exactly. That's exactly it. I think my big question in all of this is they desperately want their Christ. They want their Petke. Are they reaching here? Are they trying to put a square peg into a round hole bit? That would be my question to the Rapids is, are you guys, I understand it. Who doesn't want their next Petke? Who doesn't want their next guy who understands the team, who understands the culture, especially having just been burned as they feel by Oscar Pereira. They won't say it publicly, they feel that way. They want their guy who they want here for 5-6 years at least to build this team up into what they want it to be. But are they trying to reach a bit too far for a guy here in Pablo Mastroeni who, again, 18 months ago, unquestionably did not know what he was going to do with his life. And here he is on the doorstep of becoming the Rapids' new permanent head coach. Are they reaching? That would be my question.
I know the spotlight is going to be on Toronto and obviously the big media markets, LA and New York, certainly Seattle again. But for me, the Colorado Rapids are going to be one of the more interesting stories as the MLS season gets underway. That's Chris Bianchi. He covers the Rapids for MLSsoccer.com. You can follow him on Twitter, Rapids_news. Thanks for your time as always, Chris. I appreciate it, man.
Anytime, Jason. It was fun. Thanks.
All right. Enjoy that weather. There goes Chris Bianchi. Phone line's open. We'll go ahead and do that now. And I think we're going to sail through to the rest of to the end of the show. No more breaks to the end of the show. 347-756-6276 is the phone number. If you have any thoughts on anything happening in the soccer world? We've touched on the Premier League. I haven't really mentioned the fact that both Barcelona and Atletico Madrid lost on the weekend. Real Madrid top of La Liga now. Christian. Gareth Bale with an absolute rocket of a goal. Fantastic stuff from him, from Real Madrid, who are now leading that league. And has Atleti hit the wall? Because it was always sort of punching above their weight, only because they are not Barcelona, they are not Real Madrid. Are they actually hitting their wall now? You lose 3-0 at this point to Sociedad, who can score goals, don't get me wrong. When you lose that way in the midst of a title race, it's going to have a gut shot impact. We'll have to see. And they've got the Champions League campaign as well, as with a 1-goal lead over Milan. I was going to get this at the top of the show. I got into it a little bit. We had a technical snafu. We ended up getting to Luke Moore. We've been rolling since then. I think it's time to come back to this. And again, phone line's open, 347-756-6276. Twitter, @SoccerMorning. All opinions welcome on this, okay? But this is about the inferiority complex, or the need for recognition that MLS fans have, that soccer fans in this country have. We've got we just had Chris on. We just talked about where the Rapids rank in Stan Kroenke's portfolio, in Josh Kroenke's portfolio. Where do they rank in Denver? They probably rank about the same as every other MLS team ranks in their market. Way down the list, below the NBA team, below the NHL team. And guess what? It's not fine. We would love to improve that. Love to see soccer jump up above those sports in perception. But it's going to take some time. It's going to be a generational shift. So, to bring this back to what we started to talk about, when Jason Collins signs with the Brooklyn Nets and makes history, as most outlets will report it, as being the first out gay man to play a major team sport in the United States, let's not have our feelings hurt here, soccer people. Just be happy that that's progress happening in the NBA. And yes, give Robbie Rogers all the recognition he deserves. He was a trailblazer as well. He was the first out male gay athlete to play in a team sport that is barely close, somewhere just below major. I don't know. We don't make ourselves look good when we worry about these things rather than celebrating the positives. I'm sure that Jason Collins, and I haven't seen any interviews yet, and I don't know if he's spoken about actually getting back into the NBA, because this is the first time he's been back playing since he came out. But I'm sure he would recognize Robbie Rogers. Is that not enough? If Jason Collins says, I was inspired by the example of Robbie Rogers, he wanted to play. I mean, it's not like Jason Collins followed Robbie Rogers because he didn't want to play. It was a matter of timing. But if Jason Collins said, I want to give recognition to Robbie Rogers, who came out, retired briefly, decided to come back and join the LA Galaxy. If he wants it, then that should be enough for us. That should be enough. And to move it along here, to sort of what is major? What is major in terms of sports? What is MLS? Sorry, hold on a second, because this is important too. Is soccer above hockey? It depends on how you look at it, doesn't it? Is soccer bigger than hockey in the United States? I think you can make a very good argument that it is. That more people care about soccer than care about hockey. Hockey tends to be very regional. There are, yes, in NHL cities, there are fans in every NHL city, but in terms of playing the game, really following the game, is soccer bigger? Maybe. By pure numbers, maybe it is. Unfortunately, what matters is, number one, perception. Number two, soccer works on a different level than hockey or basketball or baseball or football. In that, we don't have the best league in the world here, and we won't for a very long time. And soccer is much bigger, much more vast, much more complicated, much more varied and rich with flavor than these sports where there is a clear and recognized number one league that happens to be based in the United States. So when we say, okay, I think it's fair to say that Major League Soccer is not one of the major sports leagues in the United States. Or if it is, you have to go to the fifth spot. They are the fifth biggest sports league in the United States. If that bothers you, then get more friends to watch soccer on television. Call into the local sports talk radio show. Well, actually, don't do that, because then that means you're probably not listening to Soccer Morning. And damn it, you should be listening to Soccer Morning. But really, if we want soccer to be among the major sports in this country, it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of people injecting that sport into conversations that have not traditionally involved them. I just wonder why we care so much. Is MLS growing? Yes or no? Yeah? I think so. MLS is growing, right? Is MLS reached its ceiling? Does anybody believe that MLS has reached the top level of what it can be? Anybody? No. Of course not. Partly because they built that in. They built in the ability to get bigger and better once they reach a certain point where they can say, well, we're a success now. Now, how you measure success, that's different than at MLS HQ than it is in the rest of the country. But you got vibrant atmospheres across the league. You got very good attendance. You don't have good TV ratings. That's a place to improve. You're not even spending that much money on salaries. So if we imagine a future where, hey, look, the league's getting something from their TV contract, they could put that back into salary. The ceiling, it's way up there somewhere. You can't even see it right now, the ceiling for MLS. That, for me, is not good enough. But it gives me hope, right? That one day, soccer, vast, worldwide, not the best league in the world. But it gives me hope that MLS will be among those major leagues in this country. That when you flip on SportsCenter, you won't have to wait a half hour for 30 seconds of soccer highlights. Jake on Twitter only took issue when journalists and outlets claimed Collins was first in all of pro sports. I know soccer isn't a major sport. Okay, that's different. That's obviously untrue. It's a flat out lie, not lie. It's a flat out incorrect statement to say that Jason Collins was the first out gay player to play in any professional sport in the United States, professional team sport. Again, because that's not true. Bobby Rogers was the first. But again, if we're gonna add those qualifiers on there, so the first major sport, is the NBA bigger than MLS, people? It might be. I think it is. Sorry, I don't like basketball, but I recognize that. I like some basketball. I don't watch the NBA. So Ringo on Twitter, just back to getting TV numbers. If we want more recognition, we have to get a stable TV schedule. 11 p.m. kickoffs are crazy to American non-soccer. That's not true. Sorry, Ringo, that's not true. Baseball fans have been dealing with 11 o'clock first pitches for how long? Ever? If you are on the East Coast and you follow an East Coast team that goes out west and plays the A's or the Angels or the Mariners, now I know there's a lot more games in baseball, blah, blah, blah. I get it. We've had this discussion on this show. Whether or not MLS needs to decide we're going to value our TV numbers, our TV possibilities higher than our ticket sales. Just enough to give TV a leg up. Just enough. Because right now, look, whether or not you're right about the 11 p.m. not being used to those things, it's true that that's not good for TV ratings. But it is good for those ticket sales on the West Coast. And at some point, the owners are going to have to say, look, we need to let our TV possibilities drive us a little bit here. Now, I don't want to see that affect the vibrant atmosphere, which is a selling point on television, which is a major part of helping MLS get to major status. These are there's a cause and effect relationship between all of this stuff. There's a domino effect because whatever. whatever I'm trying to say here. You change one thing, it could have an effect on something different. And while everybody would say, if you said, how should MLS schedule its games? Everybody will say, consistent time slots, exclusive windows, blah, 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 all of those things that come with the television world. But if I said to you, doing that will mean 4,000 less people in the stands, and I don't know that to be the truth. I don't know that to be the case. I have no evidence. I'm just saying if that was the case and it meant a less vibrant atmosphere, if it meant a quieter stadium on television, would you make that trade? Would you make that trade? As somebody already watching this league, I don't know that I would. Again, I want to see the league get bigger and better. I want to see more money paid to players. But there's some trade-offs here. At some point, the league does have to cut. They have to go ahead and just go all in and say, look, we're good. We've made a dent. We're getting 18,000 people per game. Let's go ahead with pushing TV up to the front of the line here so that we can get that major status that everybody seems to want. I mentioned earlier the roundtable. The roundtable with several MLS executives sort of talking about the state of the league, where the league sits right now, the future of the league. Tim Leiweke, I'm trying to find it right now. I'm sorry. Let me see if I can pull this up. Here we go. Tim Leiweke, the man who's responsible for pulling the trigger on $100 million worth of player acquisitions in this offseason, says that he believes this is going to be the biggest year in the history of MLS. Now, again, every year is the biggest year in the history of MLS because every year is uncharted territory from here on out. We've passed the NASL point. We're getting into that area with this league where you wonder about those training wheels. Do they need to come off? A lot of people tell you, yes, flat out, take them off. We need to get rid of single entity, blah, blah, blah. We need to let these teams spend what they want to spend. Now, you're never going to get away with, you're never going to get rid of parity. This is intrinsic. So if you had a list of the basic tenets of Major League Soccer, parity is going to be number one on that list. That might not mean single entity, but it's going to mean a salary cap. These quotes are interesting. This is from Leiweke. This is the question. Heading into 2014, what do you view as Major League Soccer's strongest asset? The strongest asset. Tim Leiweke says it's the level of play. Look at what Seattle, Philly, LA, others have done. What we're trying to do in Toronto. Look at the talent coming into the league. Look at the development of the players coming through our academies. This is a league that 20 years ago, no one in the rest of the world or in the sports industry paid attention to. I absolutely believe that this season is going to be a watershed moment for us because of the product on the pitch, the anticipation of our players going to Brazil for the World Cup, and because the amount of players on the U.S. men's national team that are now playing in our league. Are you buying what Tim Leiweke is selling you there? That level of play is MLS's strongest asset right now. I don't know. Is it? I find some of this stuff fascinating. If you have a Sports Business Journal subscription, you got to go read it. If you don't, I apologize. Merritt Paulson says the vibrant supporters culture is the biggest asset. Nick Sakevich says quality of play. Adrian Hanauer says the strength of ownership. Look, what you can say right now is whether or not MLS is a major sports league in the United States, it is headed in that direction. Will that require the perception, the popularity, the importance of legacy leagues that have been around for 60, 70, 80, 100 years to wane? Because this isn't just a matter. This is like looking at the table. You're in fifth position. You win all your games. But if everybody ahead of you wins theirs, you're never getting higher than fifth. So MLS either needs the NBA to fall flat on its face. I don't know. Is that going to happen? NBA watcher types? Major League Baseball, is it going to fall flat on its face? The money in Major League Baseball is absolutely insane. Major League Baseball will maintain its position as the best baseball league in the world for time immemorial. I can't even imagine a time where it's not. Same thing goes with the NBA. Now, the NHL, I don't know. Where did the NHL sit? They've had a lot of work stoppages. They've had some team issues. Maybe it's the NHL. I think that's everybody. This is what MLS fans do. They target the NHL. And I like hockey. I don't watch much of it, but I like hockey. I don't wish the NHL any ill will. I don't want the NHL to crumble so that MLS can take its spot among the 4. Does that even make MLS Major League? If the NHL stopped being important to cities outside of its traditional base, because I imagine it's still going to always be big in Detroit and Toronto and Montreal and Boston. But if the NHL stopped mattering in places like Columbus, Washington, D.C., Florida, where else? Phoenix, Dallas, L.A., San Jose. If those teams stopped mattering and MLS somehow jumped over the NHL and in those markets and in general, does that necessarily put MLS on major league status? I don't think so. I'm not sure. 347-756-6276 is the phone number. Feel free. Give me a call. Yell at me. Talk about your inferiority complex. Go ahead and let it out, people. MLS fans of the world, unite. Let it out. Let it out. The rest of this roundtable talks a little bit. A lot of the themes are things that we've covered here that American soccer fans think on a regular basis. Things like we need to get those other soccer fans that aren't fans of MLS. Here's Merritt Paulson. The number of soccer fans in the U.S. is staggering, but MLS now needs to win the hearts and minds of a larger share of those fans. We're doing that and raising the quality of play and need to do that by growing our national TV ratings. Now, my question for Merritt, based on that response, is whether or not that's cart before the horse. Do you raise the TV ratings to get more people, or do you get more people to raise the TV ratings? I'm kidding, of course. Quality of play is the theme throughout here. And while I'm on the record occasionally saying that I think quality of play is sometimes overrated, what matters is the perception that soccer fans have of the quality of play. I know I'm going a little meta here, but listen, this is the way that this seems to work. That it doesn't really matter how good your league is top to bottom. What matters is that people believe you are one of the best leagues in the world. Now, you got to get there by being good. But I think that a lot of this is about spending money. A lot of this is that those outward symbols of we're a quality league because we spend as much as that league over there that people like as a league. And I whatever MLS does, and I think all of this has been smart growth to this point. Producer Vince is on the line, but hold on one second. All of this has been smart growth. But until MLS is spending on the level of Liga MX, it can't be the best league in this part of the world. Until it's spending on the level of the Premier League and La Liga and Bundesliga, maybe not top to bottom, but certainly with the top 10 teams, no one's going to put it in that group. Vince, what's up?
Oh, hey, Jason, man. It's a great thing to be a soccer fan in this continent, if you will. It's also a really depressing thing sometimes. I mean,
yeah,
it's a two-pronged attack when you think about it, right? Because the international market, if you will, doesn't necessarily pay the U.S. that much respect when it comes to our game, and then even in the U.S. itself, we don't necessarily get that much respect for our own game. So,
no, I'm with you 100%.
It can drag you down, man. And
well,
you were mentioning about the NHL, and what it has to do. I believe the minimum salary, like you could be a garbage fourth line checking center. The minimum salary you can get as an enforcer is like $550,000, which I believe is above the standard salary a guy can get in MLS without being a designated player, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's what I mean by perception. That's what I mean by, and look, I'm comparing MLS to other soccer leagues, which I think is obviously more direct and more, gives a better picture of where MLS stands in the soccer world. But it matters in comparison to these other major sports in North America as well. When your best players are making, some of your best players, I mean, obviously some guys are getting paid. When some of your best players in MLS are making $300,000 a year, while your minimum salary in the NHL, Major League Baseball, NFL is above that level, that does say something about where you fit in, quote, major league terms, right?
Yeah, it does. I believe a couple months ago you were talking about, I don't remember what, but like, I feel like, because I think it was, I don't know if it was football or whatever, but Philadelphia, one of their managers got sacked, and they were talking about how he was the longest reigning manager in Philly sports, and then I believe another caller of yours said John Hackworth is the longest reigning coach.
Right.
Like, no one wants to talk about that, right? It's that perception, but like Jason, you got to put it all into context. I mean, every other country that loves soccer, that's the sport of the country, and
right.
And yeah, there's rugby and, Gaelic rule football and whatever, but
cricket.
Typically, like in Spain, for example, it's La Liga, and then that's really the only big game that you have in town. I mean, in the States and in Canada, you have the four big ones. We have the best league in the world for hockey. We have the best league in the world for baseball. We're the only real league for American football, obviously.
Right.
And and that's the thing, right? It's not like it's only Americans. I mean, all the best players of those sports around the world, their dream is to play in the NHL or in the MLB. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I this is, again, you're kind of hitting the heart of the issue when I'm annoyed by when the inferiority comes out and when people get whiny about Robbie Rogers and Jason Collins and blah, blah, blah. Again, this is the reality of the situation. You don't have to get upset about where MLS sits in order to enjoy it. So MLS is not the best soccer league in the world by a long shot. It's not the best professional sports league in this part of the world by a long shot. That's fine. And again, as long as we can't see the ceiling yet, I'm enjoying the ride. This is being an American or Canadian soccer fan is a very unique experience because there is no other league or other sport that allows for this kind of future. It's an unlimited future. The NFL is what it's going to be. You like it year to year, but it's not going to change much. It's going to be glitzy. It's going to be weird. It's going to be dangerous. The NHL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, they are what they are. There's not a few, except for maybe a London team for NFL, which is a disaster waiting to happen. There's not a growth factor to these leagues anymore. MLS is a growth league. That's fascinating to me, whether it's 5th or 12th or whatever in rankings compared to anything.
No, you're right, Jason. I mean, MLS has grown a ton, right? We got the soccer-specific stadiums. We're bringing in stars right now. I mean, you could tell me of another, but I believe this is the greatest offseason MLS has ever had.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. Absolutely not. Go ahead.
I mean, it is growing, man. It's exciting. I don't care that people don't love MLS.
Doesn't impact me at all.
General media doesn't show it the respect. I don't care. I love the league for what it is, and I'll be there every Saturday to catch a game.
Yeah, you know what? The only thing that bothers me, Vince, from a very human, just have respect for others kind of level, is when people are actively out there bashing soccer. That bugs me. That does bug, because that guy or whoever is bashing soccer likes some sport that I think is stupid, but I'm not going out of my way to make your sports. There are sports I think are stupid. There are popular sports in this country I think are stupid and boring, and I don't want to watch them. But I don't get on the air every day and go, MMA is terrible. Why would anybody want to watch that? That's not what good does that do me except make me look like a jerk?
I agree completely, Jason. I'm a professional wrestling fan. You know how much slack I have to put up with, for liking that stuff. I mean,
well, that's not a sport, Vince.
You know what I mean, Jason.
No, I'm just messing with you. I'm just messing with you.
Enjoyment of that particular form of entertainment.
I got you.
Right? It's one thing just to not talk about it, but I'm excited. I have three of my friends. They don't watch. Two of them are really into baseball, and another into hockey. I told them, hey guys, you want to go see Toronto FC's home opener? And they're like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's just check it out. They've never been to a soccer game before. It'll be their first time. And I'm excited because I get to introduce them to the sport that I love.
Fantastic.
And even if they don't like it, hey, they're coming with me to see the game. And that's really all you can ask for. Just these people who don't necessarily like the sport or know about it, just get to know it before they make up their opinion.
Yeah, that's a good call, Vince. Appreciate the phone call, man. Producer Vince up in Toronto doing work. Thanks a lot, man. All right, so I'm going to close out this discussion because we spent a lot of time on this, but I'm going to close out this discussion with one more quote from Tim Leiweke and this roundtable from Sports Business Journal. He says, if you look at the NHL, NBA, NFL, and Major League Baseball, most of the best players in the world are here. But that's not the case in MLS. That presents a unique challenge. In soccer, there are many great leagues. Trying to compete with the EPL when they have a huge TV deal, or Serie A or the Bundesliga is difficult. But we're making great strides. Not too long ago, we were probably viewed as the 20th best soccer league in the world. We fought hard and scratched hard to be one of the 12 best leagues in the world. Now people around the world view MLS as one of the top 10, maybe top 6 leagues in the world. Our attendance, our sponsorship, our ownership, our competitive level of play, it all bodes well for us becoming a dominant league. That will translate to better TV ratings and to people buying more tickets. Now, I'm not buying what he's selling necessarily on top 6 leagues in the world, depending on the context. And this is the saving grace. Whenever a guy like Tim Leiweke or Don Garber talks about MLS and its place in the world, there are a lot of different ways to look at what makes a league one of the top leagues in the world. Is it just about the quality of the players? Is it also about the stadiums and the atmosphere and the amenities and the fact that players get paid on time consistently? All of those things count, I guess. But when we talk about top 6 leagues in the world, we mean, could our teams go out and beat the 7th best league in the world teams? 202, you're on the air.
Hey, Jason, it's Rick. How you doing?
Hey, Rick McGovern. What's up, man?
Not much. I was just listening to your conversation with Vince, and something hit a chord with me. When you say that we're in a unique position to actually see a league grow and evolve, I think we're in a historically unique position in that we're seeing a league established, grow, and evolve, and we're in a position where we're in the most media-saturated part of the world in the history of the world.
Very true.
So we can see, when the Bundesliga was established 50 years ago, they might have been comparing themselves to the British. They might have been comparing themselves to some of the other leagues in the world, but they couldn't watch those matches every day. They couldn't.
It was in an abstract man. Yeah, it was in a very abstract way of going about it. Look, I got a newspaper report on the match that Nottingham Forest just played. Let's compare that to what Bayern Munich did today. That isn't, that is not the same thing.
Yeah, historically, I mean, you have these, you have the traveling clubs, and Manchester United would go on a tour, or Corinthians would go on a tour, and that was your only opportunity to compare. And we can look at management strategies, we can look at salaries, we can look at Twitter presence, we can look at all these things, and I think that's a huge benefit to MLS being sort of the first postmodern club, postmodern league, but at the same time.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to say that what you're saying, and I agree with this, and I've made this point as well. Every other league that is older than, say, 40, 50 years at probably the young end, and you can throw the J League and the A League into the group with MLS. Those are the only leagues in the world that we're not able to develop in something approaching a vacuum.
No, that's absolutely true. I mean, I think if you look at the evolution of these leagues, the Bundesliga is the last major league to be established. And they had the advantage, sort of, in that, Germany was in the midst of its reconstruction. Mm-hmm. They were essentially rebuilding their society, and the Bundesliga evolved along with that. Mm-hmm. So everything after that point, MLS, the A-League, even NASL back in the day, that they're all second and third growth leagues. They're learning from the mistakes of the previous leagues, but they're also attempting to fit into pre-existing sporting cultures.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a fascinating. It's a fascinating discussion to have. I think sometimes it gets a little too large, and we are focusing on the wrong things. But I think it's important, Rick, and I know you agree with me, to give some context to all of this talk about why MLS, the TV ratings are lagging, or why MLS isn't a major league, or why we don't, why soccer in this country isn't recognized as being bigger than certain other sports. Those, again, it's about timelines, legacy, the amount of history that's behind these. You could almost make the argument, and remember, the NBA the NBA Finals were on tape delay until the 80s. I mean, this was not. It's not always clear cut why something is popular and why it's treated as major. And part of that is not just about what the people watch on television or what they care about. It's about the history that's behind it.
No, you're absolutely right. And, part of it, too, and I think MLS is actually being a little slow to realize this, and I think Garber, coming from an NFL mindset, is definitely being slow to realize this, is that we're in an era of the fragmentation of media, of niche marketing. Mm-hmm. And the idea that, the NFL, for example, is probably the only huge conglomerate that can reach across all these lines. You look at the ratings, it's the only one that hits every box on the demographic. The NBA, post-Jordan, is rapidly a niche sport. The NHL, geographically, is a niche sport. NASCAR, after its big bump on ESPN about 20 years ago, has again become a niche sport. It's not necessarily a bad thing for MLS to necessarily be restricted to the areas of the country where it's popular, because that can make it the equal of the NBA or the equal of the NHL in that way.
Yeah, I'm going to let you go, Rick. I got limited time. But again, I think the point is, thanks for the call. Part of the point is, don't judge MLS and its growth by standards that were set by leagues that were operating in a completely different environment. All right, that's enough of that. I want to close out today's show with a funny story, an interesting story I found from adage.com of all places. It turns out that InBev, which is Anheuser-Busch, the company, Anheuser-Busch InBev, the giant company that owns all of this beer, makes crappy beer that is available at the World Cup, the only beer that's available at the World Cup, is launching a limited edition of its popular Brahma beer in Brazil, made from barley grown on the soccer field where Brazil's iconic World Cup teams have trained for decades. Brahma Seleção Especial will be sold in Brazil starting in March, 3 months before the Brazil World Cup. Brahma is the official sponsor of the Brazilian team and the official beer of the World Cup. We wanted to launch a product, this is from Sergio Gordillo, that got inside the team itself. How do you unite soccer and beer? They decided to grow barley on the training pitch where Brazil's national team has trained for decades. And then they put it they use it for a beer, and now it's a special beer. I don't understand what's going on. How does that make the beer more attractive? You're drinking alcohol made from a plant that happened to share space with Pele. Is that interesting to anybody? Does anybody really think that that's? I mean, it's not going to make the beer better. We know that. Logic dictates it's not going to make the beer any better. But does that make it more? And Felipe Scolari's signature will be on every bottle. Maybe that makes it interesting. And apparently, Scolari was so fascinated by this that he would actually go and check the growing grain on the field while they were growing it. They had a camera on the field, like a web camera, a webcam, I'm guessing. And you could see Big Phil checking on the growth of the barley on this field in Brazil. This could spawn a whole range of special edition stuff. Fantastic notion. Growing barley on the training pitch so you can make beer out of it and sell it to Brazilians who may or may not have the money to pay for it, may or may not be upset about the World Cup. People like to be technical. Daniel on Twitter. Technically, the Scottish Premier League is the newest established league in 2013. Yes. Reorganized. That doesn't count. And the Premier League doesn't count either because the first division has tons of history. So it's just the Premier League is just renamed first anyway. You know what we're saying here? J-League, A-League, MLS. Name me another one. Entering a market where other sports are bigger. Those are the three leagues that have so much in common when it comes to trying to break into those countries where you've got one, two, or three other sports that trump everything else. All right. Good show. Thanks to Luke Moore. Thanks to Chris Bianchi. Fantastic stuff from those guys. Please go follow them on Twitter and partake of their work. You can get us at show@soccermorning.com. You can leave us a message on Twitter @soccermorning, to which we will respond. And I think that's it, right? Anything else? Back on Tuesday. Hopefully we'll have some more interesting topics to consider on Tuesday. Oh, that's going to do it for us. For me, for producer Trevor. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. See ya.